Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining me because today we're going to have a very special call. And what I'm going to do is interview superstar Sid Chandra on his investment portfolio. Sid has been one of my favorite people to work with. Who am I? I'm a colleague of Sid. I work with Sid here at eXp Realty, and I've been in the business for about 9 years, and I have sold hundreds of homes. And through that experience of selling hundreds of homes, you get to learn who the good agents are, who are professional, who are thorough, who work well with clients, and who, of course, are in the business long term and take it seriously. And so I'm really happy that I have met Sid, and I have a special liking for Sid. Not only is he committed, but when Sid jumps into something with 2 feet, like he's really in it. He's into investing. He can help people throughout the whole process. And so, Sid, good to see you here. And how are you? How's your day so far?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking, Mike. And God, I must say that was a fantastic introduction. I will pay you later for that. I'm just kidding. But Mike, you've always been very modest with all of what you've got going. I know you're extremely successful with the online industry and how you market yourself. So it means a lot to hear all those things coming from you. So I truly appreciate it. And of course, coming from the real estate background, it's
For sure.
fantastic.
It's just about bringing value. Now, what's neat here is like Sid, not only does he successfully help people buy and sell, but what's interesting is he also does buy his own rental properties, manages those properties, and has put together a good strategy, which has worked for him and can also work with a lot of clients. So, Sid, my understanding is you got into investing in real estate, not necessarily in Toronto, but some of the outskirts and throughout Ontario. And now you have about 10 units, 10 doors, something like that.
That is correct, Mike. So I initially started investing in the GTA with my family, but very quickly realized the rents didn't quite support the purchase price and the carrying costs. So long story short, without getting too technical with it, I did diversify and look at outside options. So yes, at this point, I have 10 doors generating a healthy cash flowing income, which is nice.
It's nice. Yeah. In terms of buying properties as expensive as they are right now here in Toronto, York region, Durham, it's very hard for it to cash flow. And for those of you who are a little bit newer to investing, what that means is looking at the income of a property. So let's say you purchase something, is the monthly rent covering the expenses, being the monthly mortgage, the taxes, any insurance, and any other extra fees as far as lawn maintenance, and the list goes on. So Sid's really recognized, okay, what properties will actually yield a positive cash flow? Because that's never a nice feeling to own a property and for it to be actually draining your bank account. That is not a good goal anyway, unless you, of course, have some money on the side. So, Sid, tell us, when did you first get into investing in real estate?
Absolutely. So you brought up some really good points about not having your money, your properties cost you money every month and drain out your bank account, essentially. I've been there. I've really lost a lot of not only money, but peace of mind. And it's a terrible place to be with your credit card bills racking up and not being able to sleep at night.
Oh, it's
Been
stressful.
there.
One of the most stressful
But
things in the world. Jeez.
it was bad. Not even like kind of being able to buy grocery at some points, and happy to get into that at some point. But at this point, I've learned a lot from my mistakes, and now I strictly look for options that have just the cash flow. Did that kind of answer your question? I'm
Yeah,
not quite sure.
that gives clarity. And so you started pretty recently then. That's inspiring that you've done a lot only within the past like 2.5 to 3 years. And when you look at investing, and you mentioned that scenario of not being able to pay your bills, we've all been there, especially for business owners. If you're self-employed, why did you choose to invest in real estate versus some of the other popular sources when it comes to stocks or crypto, which a lot of people are in? There's a lot of different options when it comes to investing. So, what stood out about real estate investment or investing specifically for you, Sid?
Great question, Mike. So essentially, just like everyone else, I was very intrigued by stocks, crypto, and some of my friends are very successful with it. What I found is that I had a background with real estate. I was pretty much, I lived and breathed. I mean, that's what I was surrounded by. So my mom, my family invested heavily in real estate. So because of their experiences, I naturally just fell into it. And what I found is it was just a second language to me to spot out good investments, pretty much look for options where I can increase the value and quickly rent them out for top dollar and generate some passive income. And so that's why I found that, I would stick to something that I'm good at and I think I
Right.
have a background with, rather than dabble in something that I have no experience in and
100%.
reinvent the wheel.
Because once you gain the knowledge, you build the confidence, and you already have this good background of knowledge, of course, thanks to your family. And so in terms of you getting started with investing, like I know a little bit about your situation, but Sid, share with us more context, like about your mom, about needing more income for the family and for yourselves.
100%. So it's a long story.
Mhm.
I'll try to cut it short as much as I can. But essentially, my mom raised me as a single mom. My dad passed away when I was little, when I was like 10.
When you
And
were 10.
yes, that's right.
Mhm.
So I was essentially in grade 6 when my dad passed away, and I was forced into pretty much figuring things out on my own. And so at high school ish, I realized being my own boss is where I think I'd be more successful. Prior to pretty much graduating, my mom would invest in a lot of real estate. She was always looking for an extra source of income. And
Mhm.
so I found that
Well,
she
how
would
come
make
though, Sid? Because
yeah,
that's not like, let's face it, this is like very tragic. You lose your father. What made it so that you decided to first be self-employed, invest in real estate versus taking a more traditional approach? Like a lot of people get a good job, whether they're an accountant, whether they get a 9 to 5 job of their liking. What drove you to self-employment? Because I see you as a pretty kind of like lower on the risk tolerance in a good way because it makes you make smart investments. But tell us more about that.
yeah, 100%. You hit the nail on the head that I don't like taking very high risks when it comes to
Mhm.
any investments. And so we tried many options. When I was little, my mom would take me through open houses and go through investment options. And we did a few of them. And what I found is essentially that people need a roof over their head, and it's an essential investment that everyone needs. So I found it to be a little more reliable in that sense. It's tangible. I can touch it, feel it whenever I need to. In that sense, I thought, hey, this makes sense.
Mhm.
And the funny thing was that we made so many mistakes along the way, but even after the mistakes, we came out with profits. And so that's where I found that, hey, even if I'm like terribly wrong at this, I'll still end up making money. And so I thought, okay, why not
Yeah. So
jump
this
into
is
it?
interesting. So correct me if I'm wrong, because so you're sharing with me like you had the idea of investing at such a young age. So then what took you so long to pull the trigger and get your first investment? Was it that you were, you like slowly saving money? Or what took you that long? Because you shared like since high school you thought as okay, buying real estate is a no-brainer in the sense of everybody needs a roof over their head. It's not going to be going away. It's not a trendy thing by any means. It's a good source long term. So what took a while with that?
Absolutely. So we had a few
Sid,
incidents
like
that,
I asked because I'm sure a lot of the viewers can really relate to this one point of like they know they want to invest, they know it's a good idea to diversify whatever savings they have, but they just they haven't pulled the trigger, they haven't got into it. So tell us more about that and that journey for you.
yes, absolutely. So there's an old quote that I go by that, and this is from my mentor, that when a dog is sitting on a nail, he
Mm.
won't actually get up until it hurts him hard enough.
Wow.
And so essentially what that means is until the pain of staying the same doesn't outweigh the pain of change, you will stay the same. And so in this sense here, I found that when I was actually wanting to invest, we tried many, many times. At first, we used a family friend to buy our first investment property when I was little. He promised us that he's going to help us rent it out, but after the sale, he just disappeared, went MIA. And at that point, we had to actually hire the same listing agent that bought us the property to sell it for us. And he at the time said, hey, you'll be fine. Just change the floors, paint the walls, and we'll put it back on the market, without really knowing if we're going to make money on it. I mean,
He was looking for a quick buck.
he was, but I mean, I think because of luck or fate, whatever it is, we ended up selling the place for decent profit and came out with about 10 to 15,000 in net proceeds, which wasn't too bad. And that's when it really tricked. Like it clicked to me that, hey, even after we made some mistakes, we didn't quite lose money. And so that's where I started looking at options myself. We found a realtor that was on a bus stand, reached out to him, and his sales pitch was that I focus on flip properties. So we actually bought a property with him. I remember till this day, it was about 10 years ago, we bought
Oh,
a.
this was a while ago. Okay, I'm sorry. So you have this investment portfolio like you've gained over the past few years, but prior to that, so okay, perfect. At a very young age, you did have experience with the flips.
This was, yes, around like
I
nine,
see.
10 years ago. We bought
Right.
this bungalow, and we had to do a total gut job to it. The realtor did a great job kind of walking us through the whole process and let us use his contractors. We sold that place in 3 months for around 90K in net profits. So that was fantastic. We were ecstatic, and that's
Wow.
when we kind of put all our trust into the realtor, and that's where I think, made the biggest mistake. And I think I should emphasize here that many people think that realtors are pretty much like a one-stop shop. Yes, they can be, but I wouldn't necessarily rely on the realtor for everything, like A to Z. It's very important to do your own due diligence and homework as well.
Right.
Realtors are there to guide you through the process. So we actually realized the hard way. We bought our second property with the same realtor, and this
Okay.
time he said, "Hey, let's buy a bigger investment because the profits will be much higher." So we bought in an area which was like a luxury area with $1 million homes around it, and at the time it needed a similar complete gut job. After doing the work to it, what we realized is that property was actually sitting on the market for around 30 days or so. It wasn't selling. And the price that we bought it at was higher than the sale, like comparable sales at the time. The
Okay.
realtor didn't really tell us this because he wanted to make a quick sale. But as we were doing the renovations, usually he would have his contractor actually help us through the whole process. But remember, I told you that I was very intrigued by this whole thing. So that was the time when I actually applied for my license and started to take my courses. And
Oh, isn't
I
that
was,
neat?
yes, and I was very excited. I thought, hey, now I'm going to work side by side with this realtor because he's amazing at what he does. And the first person I shared the news with was him. And that's where I think that's where I got my first taste of competition in a very subtle way. Just pretty much distanced himself from me, and
Ouch.
and left us in the dark there. Eventually, his contractor just disappeared as well with a bunch of money.
Because he figured that
Um,
you were, of course, going to sell it yourself and he wouldn't be getting the commission.
Yeah, actually, we didn't even want to take on that listing, but he knew there was no future business for him. And so he quickly just like turned his back on us. Long story short, after that flip, we ended up having to rent that place out for an extra year and then sold it with like around a 20,000 profit. It was bad, like
At least
very
it was
stressful.
profit, but I mean, it didn't go as smoothly as you expected, being a luxury home compared to the.
Yes, yes. I remember till this day, that 1 year that we held on to the property was with a private loan, high interest rates. Like at that time, I wasn't earning much. So it was all on my mom to really carry that property. We had to cut down on costs drastically.
That must
Credit
have been
card
a
bills
lot.
were nuts. And so that's when I really had to step in and manage contractors, like hire the bare minimum that I can, do work myself to get the place sold. But that was, I think, a huge learning curve for me, and I think my family as well. But
That's a
after that
full-time job.
point,
Yeah.
yeah. So after that point, I realized, I'm done with real estate investing. I'm not ready for it yet until I actually help a few clients and get a feel of how these things work. So I solely focused on helping other clients buy, sell, and invest in real estate themselves. In the first few years of my career, I did strictly leases. So I
Right.
got to know what to look for in tenants when getting them units. And then not long ago in 2019, I found my first property. That was a strange story too. I had a friend that was heavily invested in real estate because of his family. And so he would always tell me, hey, why don't you look at areas like in the outskirts? He lived in London at the time, and he
Right.
suggested I invest in Sarnia. And
Okay.
I thought, okay, why not? Like that's a great area. Prices were low. And so he said that, you know what, just buy it there. I told him, buddy, how am I going to buy this property and manage it when I'm here in Brampton? And he said, don't worry about that. I have my crew. I'll take care of it for you. I'll even go and take a look at it. If you want an inspection done, I'll be there during the inspection. And this was a time when I was very busy with my business. So I completely trusted him, sent in an inspector. I didn't even look at the property. I just had an inspector go in, give me a report. And I remember this was like the first day that the property was listed. I quickly just put in a blind offer with no conditions by doing a inspection prior to putting in the offer.
Right, like a pre-inspection, they call it, right?
Exactly. So I did that. We found a little bit of a leak in the basement, but I thought, okay, we can take care of that. I had done it in the past in my other investments. So eventually, we took possession, and my friend said this property is going to cost around 15K in renos to complete. I thought, okay, this makes total sense. Let's go ahead. Like a month and a half went by. I had paid him 15,000, and he said, listen, we're running short because this leak is not getting fixed. I need more money. I paid him another 5,000, and then I find that we were 2 months into the project. Nothing, like we were still just the floors were taken out and everything was just incomplete. That's when I realized, I'm being, I think, given the runaround. So I need to actually step in. I drove down there, realized he was not even like 25% done when he was supposed to be done fully. So I had to actually this friend was the first guy I met when I came to Canada. So I had a lot of trust in him, but I had to actually kick him out of my house. I had to completely cut him out and take things in my own hands. And at that time, things were tough, but I managed to hire another contractor, get things going. We rented the place out for $1,600. So that property I bought in 2019 for $196,000. Put down 20%, so 40K, saved it up over the years, and then overall I was in another 30 to 40K in renos, but all of my expenses were carried with the rental income, so it wasn't too bad.
Right.
So I think
versus you doing all the work and at the same time it be not cash flowing.
Exactly, it actually did cash flow, even though we took on the extra loan to get the extra renovation costs done. I did borrow a little bit from my mom there because I was extremely low on funds. I believe it was like around 10-15,000.
Yes. Sorry for interrupting. So this was your first. So everyone watching, there's a lot of education from this. Like you can see the examples Sid mentioned earlier, especially when you're buying high end and you're doing it with the intention of having it being a flip property. Like that is always looked at as a big risk. When it comes to the luxury market, what do we know about the high end? It generally is going to take a little bit of time for it to sell, and it's very, you can say, sensitive to whatever's happening in the economy. Very often we see listings under $1 million selling very quickly because naturally there's going to be more buyers. But when you're dealing with the high end, purchasers look at it more so from an investment perspective. And so Sid learned here. And then with this property over here, Sid, tell us more about so this was your first property, and how did you arrange just gaining enough money for that down payment, getting the education to understand what the closing costs are, so the viewers can understand just how you went about that, from a financial perspective, because it's not easy to work. I mean, the cost of living is so high right now in the GTA. We have that, and then actually having the discipline on the side to save money and knowing how much they need to save in order for them to make their first investment. So Sid, tell us more about that.
100%. Great question. So I actually cut down a lot on all of my expenses. I remember in the first 2 years before I started investing myself, I was living with my parents, like my mom, essentially. So I didn't really have a mortgage to pay for. full disclosure. But what I also found is like I was paying her rent. So essentially, yeah, there were some expenses I was incurring, but overall, I would cut down on going out, on those
Right.
fancy
More so
dinner.
it was that because so you were like self-employed, like being an agent. That was your sole source of income, correct?
It was,
Right.
yeah.
And so, although what a lot of people don't see, because agents these days, we all look like superstars and we drive flashy cars, but we have very big expenses. We not only have our brokerage fees, but what so as the money comes in, of course, we have to pay a huge amount of tax on it, marketing costs, etc. So then once that money came in, you had the discipline to maybe be a little bit more mindful of where your costs were going to as far as just going out, having a social life, of course, having the mindset of eating in versus eating out and looking all that. And then
Going on less
I know you're good,
vacations.
just you're very good, you're organized, you're structured, and you have that mindset that you're doing it for a good reason. So good for you.
Yes, yes, I appreciate that. I actually learned a lot of these lessons when I had that luxury property that we had to hold on to for a year. I was able to really manage my expenses during that time, and
Because it
so
was
I
scary,
used.
right? I mean, like that, just that example. Like I'm thinking about when I was selling homes, like I was selling homes at very high volume in 2016, 2017. And for those of you who maybe got your license afterwards or weren't paying too much attention to the market, 2018 was a very tough year.
Yes.
Buyers did not want to buy because they were skeptical about the market, and every seller out there did not want to sell because they thought the market was going to bounce back. And I remember just being an agent, my income almost cut in half, being very mindful of expenses, not being able to travel anymore. And it really is a good life lesson, helps you to build thick skin, and just helps you to really come from more gratitude every single day of actually having money to have those luxuries. So you learned a lot from that experience with that luxury property back then. And then obviously it helped you moving forward. And so in terms of the numbers, how much money did you actually save up for that first purchase?
So I saved up 40,000
Mhm.
just for the down payment, and then obviously the closing costs. So the overall amount that I had aside was in the range of 75 to 80,
Okay.
because I anticipated the overall, like, I mean, the rental costs, the closing costs.
So how much were you looking to purchase? What was the idea?
So my budget was 220 max,
Okay.
because I was looking in Sarnia.
Right.
And I did see several options in that range, so it wasn't too bad.
Okay, good, good. So you had like the 20% down, and then you accounted, I guess, extra costs for not just closing costs, but I guess in your you had the idea that you would probably have to make some changes to the property as well in order
That's
for it to
correct.
be good,
That's
like a good
correct.
cash flowing
Very early
property.
on in my career, I would attend a lot of seminars and just like information sessions where they would talk about having these costs aside ahead of time,
Right.
carrying costs to keep the property vacant before renting it out, having rental costs aside. So all these expenses. So nothing comes by surprise when the time arises.
Because cash is king. And then what happens with a lot of people is they close on a property and then they realize that they need money to upgrade the property or to fix something up, whether it's the roof, whether it's the windows, and then they have to actually borrow money at a higher interest rate. So you had a little bit more caution here and you said, I'd rather just have the safety, kind of safety net for you. So I think that's great. But Sid, a lot of people are going to watch this and say, okay, 220,000. Sid could have done it back then because the average price is lower. Like, what would you say to the audience that maybe is a bit discouraged with how the average price is right now in the GTA and Ontario?
That's a great question. So, if we were to look at the statistics, and this is where my realtor hat comes on, that if we were to look at the statistics, prices have always climbed up over the course of 3 to 5 years. So yes, I mean, right now I think it's an excellent time to enter because just like the 2017 market that you touched on, Mike, prices adjusted and now we're double what we were before. Similarly, we're going to be, double what we are now in 5 years from now. And that's just my opinion. So I
Yeah,
do think that there's
I mean,
tons of opportunity.
like I totally agree. So a good just takeaway learning point is maybe they would have to save a little bit more money, but it would be worth it, unquestionably.
Yeah. So it's all about like would we even want to save this kind of money if we're not
How
going to
like
make money.
how much sitter are you telling people maybe it's a good idea for them to have up maybe like saved or just some sort of idea? Let's say like firstly, where is the average price in terms of it like for the people that are getting into the market but don't have too much saved up? Like where should they aim for, would you say? And what should they expect
Absolutely.
as far as purchase prices?
And
I mean,
so
like given that they're able to travel a little bit.
100%. So, given that they're able to travel a little bit, I would say for something decent at an entry level, again, there's no such thing as a bad investment. If you don't own a property, just getting into the market, it should be top priority.
That's a great point. I mean, I remember like buying my first property, for instance, and I made a few offers, but my heart really wasn't in it. I was scared. Is it the right property? But thankfully, I had so many friends that were already in the game of owning a lot of property and obviously a lot more experienced than I was. And they kept on saying, Michael, the first house you buy is never going to be the perfect house.
That's right.
And
That's
that
right.
really
Exactly.
clicked with me. And it was that same day I was comfortable making the offer and I got the deal done. That was like 760. Now it's up like 1.1. But if they did not tell me that, I wouldn't have bought it. So pull the trigger now versus waiting, because more likely than not, the prices will be up. And
Exactly. So most people that I knew back then when I invested were investing in the GTA
right.
for properties that were around 700K, 600K. When I looked at something that was 200K in Sarnia, right? Similarly, right now, depending on where you are financially, there are options for you. Obviously, you want to start out with something like 40, 50,000 minimum and then work your way up. But instead of
That's not bad at
saving,
all. 40 to 50,000 minimum, given that you're sharing, like we look at household income. I think that's great. Of course, people can always like refinance their property. Like there's so many available means of having cash out there that
yeah,
people, it all starts with knowledge. So good on you from learning from other people. I know you've like, obviously absorbed a lot of information as far as books, podcasts, masterminds, investor meetups. And it's nice as you gain more knowledge, like I mentioned, you become more confident about the process and you just focus on one property at a time. And tell us more about, Sid, like how do you or how did you determine what areas would be the best to purchase for your purpose of investing?
100%. So I follow what a lot of well, it's particularly an investment group follows called RAIN, and I'm happy to share that later if needed. But basically, we look for properties that are A, near highways,
Right.
B, that are in up and coming areas, very underrated. So nobody had really quite knows about it yet.
Okay, nice.
Low purchase price and high rents. What I mean by that is anything outside of the hot booming areas like the GTA, the further out we go, the lower the purchase price becomes.
And,
So I
and,
look
and
for
and is the rent in most cases still decent, provided that it's close to a highway and it seems up and coming with respect to the economy, jobs, people moving out there?
That is correct. Yes. So we look for areas that have a high income demographic
Right.
and a tenant profile that's somewhat professional and not too rough, I would say. So not people that are on ODSP or welfare, not discriminating, but just because I found that managing tenants of that sort are a little bit more difficult,
Oh,
right? So
absolutely. And that's
so
where obviously it's helped you, having given that you work with a lot of leases, especially as a realtor back then when you started, and sometimes now, of having the time to do the due diligence, check people's credit report, bank statements, all of that, and you get to know from knowledge and of course get a good gut feeling. And I know, Sid, it's just something important just to put this full spectrum is I was going to ask, do you buy based on the rental income and how well it cash flows? Do you buy based on future appreciation? Is it all of the above, or how do you go about that?
And that's a great question. I normally buy just strictly on cash flow because I've learned the hard way that my bills need to be paid, and being a realtor, my income's up and down. So having a consistent passive flow of income really helps gain that peace of mind. So yeah, I look for cash flowing properties. However, lately what I've started to do is look for potential developments in a particular city. For example, they're building the LRT down towards Niagara as well, from
Right.
what I've heard. And so now, the focus has been in cities where I see development, whether it's through the GO train, the LRT, or potentially a Google headquarters. I just look for areas that there will be a potential growth.
Right. Those, because there are some pockets. I know from speaking with a lot of clients, like they know the right thing to do is to invest out of the GTA, but they just don't know where. And they say, Michael, they say, Sid, do I go up north? Do I go east? Do I go west? And it's all about gaining the knowledge on those specific areas, and then you looking at the development interest and all that. And so, are you like anti-flip? Would you say?
I think so. I mean,
It's a
I don't
full-time
turn.
job. I think you focus on real estate. I think it's great because you and I, we have that in common. And usually it's the people who are doing flips. It's like they have some sort of, it's almost like their full-time job, and they have a system in which it happens. But in the GTA, obviously it's very difficult without the partners. And of course it's less predictable. I mean,
It
how many
is.
people do we know like 2017, 2018 really taught us a good lesson because so many people purchased and they expected to do a flip and they weren't able to sell it at their price. I think you're pretty fortunate to actually get out of that luxury home with some positive. I know with the positive, a lot of people we know lost not only $100,000, $200,000 plus. Had,
That's right. That's
ruined
right.
their finances and their credit forever.
100%. They're still recovering from it. And so you're absolutely right. I mean, unless you're in the industry as a contractor or someone that does it for a living, flipping properties can be expensive and risky. And so, yeah, 100%. I always go by the BRRRR strategy, which
Yeah.
is buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. I think it's just very risk proof, in the sense, as long as you follow the right steps, you can't lose from a
Yeah. So the
strategy like
BRRRR
that.
strategy, everyone, this is great. You can look this up on Google. You can understand it. You can know the ins and outs. It's a very popular and good, like proven investing strategy. Sid, you want to say it once more? And how many R's are there?
There's 3 R's.
Okay.
It's
So so be like Bruce, Robert.
That's it. You can't forget that.
Yeah.
That's a good way to actually remember it. But it's buy, rent, well, buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. So pretty straightforward,
Mm.
but it does take work, and it does take patience. And
Yeah,
yes,
so let's look at that and deconstruct that a little bit. So first, like this, given that we're going to buy and then we're going to do the renovations, that means that we're buying something which maybe needs some work. So we're looking for those first areas of opportunity. We are not looking for the properties which are upgraded, which have the pot lights. We're looking and the granite counters. We're looking for the properties which need work because likely they're going to be up for sale for a lower price than market value, which is great. So we're
that's
buying,
right.
we're doing the renovations, we're renting it out, and then we're refinancing it because as a result of us doing those upgrades and making it making it ready to move in, maybe even being a bit more upgraded than is necessary, is going to allow it to be appraised for more. And then what we can do is we can pull out the equity from the property and repeat it and purchase something else. So
Correct.
it is it's great because for all of you who are watching this and you're looking at this like Sid, Michael, this is like a no-brainer. It is a no-brainer. So if you have that thought, you're absolutely right and you understand it. So it's great.
Yes. Most things are no-brainers, and we know them. It's just that we need to be reminded or actually take action on these things to actually see the results, just like anything else, right? But yeah, 100%. It's quite straightforward.
Yeah, with respect to the future appreciation, because we can't ignore like how some of these properties, specifically in Ontario, have appreciated at such a rapid rate. We've seen properties like double in price over the past 3 years. So your idea is basically like that's not really what's driving you to buy in the first place. If you can have the appreciation, it's kind of icing on the cake. But if you're buying something, you're collecting monthly cash flow, there's nothing to lose, and it's going to, of course, bring in money, make you feel better at the same time, and long term it's good for you, it's good for your mom, it's good for your family and your future family.
Exactly. So I typically look for just strictly the cash flowing element in a property. The appreciation tends to happen down the road by default anyways. So what I look for is multiple doors, because the cash flow ends up being higher with such properties.
Double
I
doors though, and Sid, I'm sorry for interrupting. So if you had the choice, would you rather let's say buy one property which only has one door, meaning one unit to rent, and it's being cash flow positive, or buy the same property, it being the same amount cash flow positive, but it has two units. I would imagine you would go with the one it being like one unit because of the fact that it's easier to manage.
100%. That's what I thought initially as well. It's just like, I mean, it appreciates well, and it's easy to manage. But very quickly I realized that, my goal is to have cash flow. And the more tenants I have in the property, the higher the income I can get. And that will help me not only pretty much pay down my principal in the house, but allow me to get some extra income to pay off my bills.
It's amazing for all of you watching. Like, this is unheard of, to buy a property which is cash flow positive. I mean, I just closed on a pre-construction condo in Vaughan last year, and I'm cash flow negative by about $100. It wasn't expected. We expect the rents to go up. So Sid's been able to do that. And so surely just follow his advice and invest from the perspective of Sid. And what we're going to do, Sid, is I want to hear a little bit more about your strategy long term. And then afterwards, we can go into like what the common mistakes people make, as well as like strategies around tax sheltering your income. So, I mean, you're buying all these properties, you're going to collect them. I know you have the intention of buying maybe like a property a year or even more, depending on what you see out there. Like, when are you selling these things, or have you thought that far, or not thought that far?
No, I absolutely have, and that's a great question. So my end goal is really to generate at least around $10,000 at this point in passive income.
Wow.
And so when that happens, then I will stop buying properties and just start putting any extra income I get into the mortgage to pay it down and make it a mortgage-free property.
Right.
So that's essentially where I'm gonna, stop and take the foot off the gas. But in terms of selling the properties, I'll never sell them. I mean,
Who knows?
why?
There's nothing wrong with that. Give them to the future kids. So even if you don't sell them, you're winning here.
That's right. That's the goal, to build a legacy.
Like one day, 20, whether it's 25, 30, 40 years from now, or maybe even less, if he chooses to put more money into the properties, they're going to be cash flow like not only cash flow positive, but if the mortgage principal has already been paid down, he's not paying interest anymore, and he's just collecting that rent. And that, of course, is a great feeling. And it's great, just me and Sid being active agents. We meet people like this, and they're living very comfortably in their 50s and 60s. They're having the luxury of being able to travel, just having some local knowledge here and there. And it all comes from taking that first step, making a plan, having the discipline, and learning from the experience. And of course, there is something to be said about having thick skin, because what I've learned about the whole industry of real estate, especially being an agent, like, stressful things happen. And you need to have a short bounce back time. So if something happens wrong with a tenant, if something happens at closing, maybe a specific lawyer is going after you for whatever reason, these things happen. It's just naturally part of the process. So keep the goal in mind, right? And everything else is just noise, right?
Exactly. Our industry is extremely volatile, and the income can fluctuate. So yeah, having this cushion, I think this applies to all entrepreneurs and business owners. That it's nice to have a plan B, a second vehicle that is generating income for you, even when
100%. Yeah, I think like if COVID taught us anything, it's we can't rely on one source of income as much as we would like to.
Exactly, yeah, and that's essentially it. So for me, my goal is to travel and not have to essentially worry about these bills. So I think this is
like more passive income is obviously better that way, just how cyclical everything is. And so tell us about in terms of from what you see in working with clients and even yourself, and what people ask you, of course, through your YouTube channel, through your daily conversations. What are the biggest mistakes that people make when getting started when it comes to purchasing an investment property?
Great question. Yes. So it's very straightforward. And I find this with even the clients I help many times. We look for properties that are fully turnkey, updated, staged, perfectly photographed. And we try to bid on those. And lo and behold, we have like 10 other buyers interested in those properties as well. And so what I've found is to not look at such properties I would say, the biggest mistake is looking at properties that are fully updated. There's really no upside to that. There's no potential in increasing value.
And
So
then
I
also
would
said like it doesn't like so everyone like the takeaway is don't look for properties which are upgraded. And then you would have the thought in the back of your mind, like maybe it's upgraded, but it looks like it's of good value, maybe lower below market value. But that never happens. It's almost always above market value because the
yeah.
seller's mindset is I'm doing these upgrades to get more for my money, where
Thank
we're
you.
looking for the opportunities in which they don't want the headache. They're willing to take a little bit of a loss because they need to focus on their day job. They need to focus on their family. Maybe they're elder and they just want out of this situation and not have like the actual stress from it, right?
Exactly. So I look for something that needs not necessarily a complete gut job, but some cosmetic work. It might have just not been photographed properly, marketed well, or the seller, just like you said, wants to desperately move out. So I mean, without actually preying on someone else's, sorrow or wounds, I try to make it a win-win situation. But at the same time, it's very important to look for opportunities rather than something that you're emotionally attached to and you
Yeah. They
buy.
say like
You
they
know,
say buy ugly homes or if you think you like a home and how it looks, you may as well look somewhere else. Just be a little bit more open-minded. And something one of my mentors has always told me was buy the worst house in the nicest area, right?
exactly,
Not the nicest
exactly.
house in a bad area. But as far as like mistakes, I mean, there's so many. Besides that, Sid, like what else from a financial perspective, maybe from like a knowledge perspective,
Absolutely. So when I even buy, let's just say, a property that needs work or help a client with something like that, we always look for like areas that we can improve with little money and increase drastically the value. Well, for example, put in vinyl flooring that's on sale in areas that are important. And then essentially what we can salvage, we try to salvage kitchen cabinets. Many times we'll reface them instead of just gutting out the entire kitchen and adding in a new one. You can do wonders with just changing countertops and the doors on kitchens, right? Like on the kitchen cabinets.
absolutely.
And
Versus taking that extra step and just like taking out the whole kitchen and putting in a brand new kitchen. I like the example you mentioned of the floors. People don't always need hardwood floors. Like a laminate will do, especially if you have tenants. Hardwood
exactly.
maybe hardwood may be better if you're selling, but everyone just know like you learn these little details afterwards. It's part of the process. The first thing really just starts with you being okay with it, sticking to a plan, having the mindset, and really just learning. So Sid, like what would you tell our audience about just how they can go about learning about this and how they can get into the market?
100%. So what I would say is start with what you have, focus on the upcoming cities in the GTA, not
Right.
necessarily the extremely populated and expensive areas.
Right. Like those
Learn,
dense areas.
I'm sorry.
Like those dense areas.
Exactly, exactly, and essentially lean on someone like your realtor, who first of all find a realtor that's extremely knowledgeable about the strategy you want to implement, and lean
Right.
on his expertise or her expertise, because it's so important that you take their advice. They've already made those mistakes. They've likely already failed many times, and they will avoid and prevent you from making those same mistakes. And last but not least, don't be emotional. Don't buy that property thinking you're going to move into it. Think of it as a tenant's perspective and
Mm.
see what they would like. You'll be surprised with the difference between something you would want to move into and an investment property.
Yeah, and so Sid, if somebody has this idea like, okay, I'm saving money, I'll probably call Sid in a year once I have money saved. Should they be speaking to a mortgage broker at that time? Should they be talking to a mortgage broker now? Like, where does the mortgage broker come part of the as part of the puzzle?
Great question. Yes. So I would say it's yes today. Yeah, it's talking to a mortgage broker is key in this whole process. As soon as you think about the idea of investing, look at how much savings you have, and I would reach out to. Sometimes finding a good mortgage agent can be tricky. So speaking to the actual realtor may be beneficial because they more than likely have a team of individuals to guide
Yeah,
you
that's
through
that's
the
excellent. And
whole
so,
process.
Sid, could any viewer just pick up the phone, call you, and say, Sid, you have like a mortgage broker that you would personally recommend? Could they do that?
100%, yes. And not
Yeah.
just a random mortgage agent, but someone that specializes with investments to be able to guide you
Yeah,
for,
it's
yeah.
it's the best because that person is an extension of us, and we would want to make sure that they service you well. And so for all realtors, that's what they should be doing. For instance, if people are using a mortgage broker that I recommend, I would only team that client up with a mortgage broker like I personally use on one of my own properties, or I know has successfully helped out a client very recently, just because you never know. And so, great takeaway. Talk to a mortgage broker yesterday. So, talk to them today. Even if you don't have the money, the great news about calling a mortgage broker or simply walking into your bank, because most banks out there, like a TD or RBC, they have a specific division that can help you with these questions as far as saving up to buy a property, what the mortgage is like, and really giving you clarity, because it all starts with the knowledge. To do that, it's absolutely free. As long as you have a phone, you can make that call. They're a free service. So the way that they make their money is later on, if the mortgage does happen to transpire, if it's under them, if it doesn't, like there's no hard feelings. And the same thing can go with Sid. It's absolutely free for you to pick up the phone and to just call him and have that conversation. You'll never know what you're going to learn about it. So don't feel bad about bothering Sid or thinking he's too busy. He's not. He wants to help. He's in the business long term. He's all about building real value and real relationships, because if to gain this knowledge, it's absolutely critical that you have some good resources to learn from and can share with you these things. Okay, this is how much money you'll need to save up in order to purchase over here. These are the closing costs that you should be aware of, as far as how much a lawyer may cost, etc., and who the important connections are. And of course, I mean, where Sid is really going to be useful is showing you properties that you may want to purchase, because he actually has the firsthand knowledge of being in your position, looking for properties out there and buying. And so is you're able to utilize him that way and say, Sid, if you were me, would you be buying up north? Would you be buying west? You can even look at a specific area and run it by him. And so, yeah, I think that's great. And I spoke a lot there, but Sid, it's really because I think so highly of you, and that people should genuinely use you for this specific purpose if they're looking for an investment property, because you've done it yourself and you built a good thing.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I've tried essentially all the types of investments, whether it's pre-construction, flips, long-term rentals. So I can definitely advise on what is more lucrative for your particular situation. And so, yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to just have a general chat. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not
And
always about making a sale.
what kind of strategies, if any, are you personally using to like tax shelter your income and the rent that you're getting from these properties? Since taxes here in the GTA and in Ontario, wow, they're taking half of our income. It's a real thing.
Yes, they are, and I learned it the hard way after doing two flips. The overall, I mean, tax capital gains that I was hit with was pretty high, and now they're already, changing that to 100% taxes on capital gains. So what I do really to shelter myself is not sell the property. It's as easy as that.
Right.
Just actually, stick with the burst strategy and renovate, rent, and then refinance. Because when you
Right.
refinance the funds, you don't pay capital gains. You just actually are able to take out the equity and write off the interest on that loan.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's,
big.
it's a total win-win situation, in my opinion. And then to top that off, I also focus on properties that are long-term investments. So when I actually get the rental income, that gets counted towards the income that I make. But
Right.
I should mention, any property I do purchase is always bought under a corporation.
Under a corporation rather than your personal name. And
First,
and so how come people should take that strategy?
so for just reach out to an accountant or your realtor, and they'd be happy to guide you through the process.
Mhm.
But basically, yeah, buying it under a corporation. So open one up for like a couple $100, and then when you buy it under your corporation, you can actually pay out the salary to yourself, and this
Right.
way you're not actually taxed on all of the rental income, but rather just a portion of it. Uh,
Right.
Happy to talk to you in more
And
detail about that.
the reason is you're kind of doing well. First, it's very cheap to do. Second, it's simple. And
Yeah.
then is just in the event that you need to sell for whatever reason, you're able to have the advantage with respect to not paying as much capital gains as you would if it was just under your name, right?
Exactly, exactly. So typically, if you sell your property under your personal name, it's 100% taxable. When like I mean, the capital gains, the appreciation is 100% taxable. Well, when you buy it under a corporation, you only get charged 50% of the capital gains. So there's a major savings there, like huge, especially if your property goes up 100, 200K in value or more.
It's just like a nice safety net. There's no necessarily like downside to it. So obviously that's good. And so for you, Sid, was it, I mean, in some of these areas, like we're talking, they're not so dense. Maybe they're up and coming, but who knows what's going on at that particular time. Was it difficult at all to find tenants for any of them? Was there ever a situation you bought it, it was vacant for a bit?
It certainly was earlier in my career. Like when I actually helped my mom find a couple of tenants in her properties, we got burnt few times. People just actually subleasing the place or just being professional tenants and just paying right on the last day before they get evicted. And then you really can't evict them at that point. So we went through court proceedings and everything and lost a bit of money there. But overall, because I was a leasing specialist early in my career, we did about 60, 70 leases. I knew what to look for in tenants before, renting the place out to them. We follow a very strict process in checking references, employment letters, credit scores, the whole 9 yards. And so,
the reference check is huge. How people skip this step?
Tell me about it. People are shy sometimes to get on the phone or something, but that's the most important, like just to actually speak to the landlord or the employer and gauge.
Speak or their friend. And for all those landlords out there, and don't be shy about calling the references in the first place. And second, don't be shy about asking for more. You can naturally just confront the prospective tenant and say, these people aren't picking up their phone. Maybe they're not a close relationship to you because they haven't spoken to you for 9 months. Do you have anybody else?
Exactly.
And don't be shy about saying no.
Exactly. That's key. I think once you actually get a good tenant in there, the entire process becomes very fun, and I think it just becomes less stressful.
It is less stressful. Take the stress and get uncomfortable at the start so you don't have to get uncomfortable later with the bad tenant. And it's so nice how mindset is neatly just correlated with this, because when you look at people who are successful at this game of investing in real estate, like they have the thickest skin, and I really respect how much like resilience is built. It's always impressive. And Sid, so like you're clearly doing a lot in the sense of you own these properties, you're still actively looking to purchase and looking for opportunities. At the same time, you sell a lot of homes and do a great job about that process, whether not only helping buyers. I've seen you sell some really impressive properties that you list them for sale. You do all the right marketing strategies. You have a very good, creative, innovative way of marketing properties, not only online, but doing some of the old-fashioned techniques. Like you just do whatever it takes to get them sold. So how are you just managing all this in your day-to-day?
It's not easy. I mean, there are times when I do get into some odd arguments with the family because they think I work too much. But now I've found a balance, and the main reason why, and I have you to thank on this as well, is being able to delegate, especially those admin tasks, delegating any renovation costs on, or any renovation for that matter on projects, contractors, photography, managing the tenants, any leaks, plumbing, even finding the tenants. Everything I do now is completely delegated. So I focus on just what makes me money in my business.
Yeah, what makes money and what his best actions he can take are, which is going to naturally be the way we all live the most fulfilling life. And thanks for mentioning that to me, because my coach basically told me to delegate the things outside of the 3 or 4 activities that are really responsible for me living my best life and living my best career. And so it's important to note, like, delegation doesn't necessarily mean handing off a client to somebody who isn't as satisfied. No, it means it's mutually beneficial, because it could be a one-man show and taking pictures of a house, but a house which is coming up for sale. But if he delegates it off to a professional photographer, the client is going to be more satisfied because they're getting professional pictures. And Sid has taken himself away because he knows where he's most effectively going to be used and going to be able to add value. So by being able to delegate, it's win-win. And so that's, of course, been really helpful for you. Of course, not only when it comes to the finances and making a lot of money, but also having a good personal life. And I'm sure your family does understand that you're working hard now so that later things will be a bit easier.
Exactly.
And there's something to be said, like we're me and you, we have that in common. We love to accomplish things. We love our work, which is why
Yes.
we're, I mean, like people ask Michael, how long are you doing this? Like, I think every day is a holiday.
Yeah.
When I started
Yeah.
off in the business, weekends didn't matter to me because we found what we like within this business, and that's what we stick to, and it's an enjoyable process. And as we're
It
working with
is
clients, we're
100%.
yeah, we're obviously getting a kick when they have a win as well.
100%, 100%. I get inspired just by your work ethic as well, Mike. And I think just surrounding yourself with quality people goes a long way.
For sure.
And so, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's like
We
it's all
love
just a good feedback loop because your environment matters, right? Hiring a coach, hiring a mentor, or somebody you're paying for, that's temporary, but being around a good group of people, that's permanent.
absolutely.
Sid, any last thoughts you have for our viewers just pertaining to this topic?
I just say it's never too late to jump in. Couldn't be a better time now with the market cooling off a little bit. I would strongly suggest, jumping in when you can. Don't try to time the market. It's not about timing the market. It's about time in the market. So just be actually aware of where you are in your situation and just jump in if the time is right.
And we'll say we'll have our viewers now. We're also going to have viewers a few months from now, 1 year, and probably a few years from now because we've added so much value here. So let's say that the market does pick up, prices do go up by let's say 5 to 10% in a few months. Would it still be a good idea for those people to buy, or when is it maybe not a good idea to buy? Do you think? So we can look at it in sort of like an unbiased perspective and take our agent hats off.
100%. So properties are essential to people to live in. I wouldn't say it's ever a bad time necessarily to buy a property, but what I would say is what's your strategy? Is it to sell the property in a month, in 2 months?
Absolutely.
Then I would look at something that's run down. If it's to hold on to the property for a couple of years, then you're gonna see the market go up in value regardless.
100%. Yeah. So it's not necessarily like bad market, good market. So it's bad property and good property.
Exactly. It's bad purchase price or good purchase price.
Because
Yes.
we're simply, whether it's a good market in the sense of it being good for sellers or good for buyers, what we're looking at is a property relative to the purchase price and making sure that the rental market is really still good, so it can pay off everything. So
Exactly. Yeah.
there's a lot of great content there, and don't be shy, everyone, about rewatching this. We'll do our best job to add timestamps. I wanted to thank you all for tuning in here. Sid, I think that was great. We shared a lot of value, and for everyone, don't be shy about contacting Sid. He's a great person. He will help you out. It's not Sid's interest to just make a quick buck off of you, and so he'll help you just design that strategy, help you with your first investment property. Also on the side of helping you sell your existing home, he can guide you through not only should you do it, how to do it, what the right way of going about it is, and the strategy. And make sure to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and comment below what was your favorite thing that you learned. If anything, we appreciate all comments, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Appreciate it, Michael. Thanks a lot for the kind words.
Yeah, it was great. We had a lot of fun. Talk to you soon.
Yes, I had a great time. And I hope the viewers found some value in this as well.
For sure.
Take care.
Okay, talk to you soon.